Hello everyone and welcome back for some more Drag Race gossip, secrets and drama. Ha ha ha. So I'm back for another Have Your Say video, which is where you at home get a chance to vote on whether you agree with the latest episode of RuPaul's Drag Race.
Oh, please, not this again.
And this video is for RuPaul's Drag Race All Stars 10, Episode 10. So today we're going to be recapping the episode, going through the results of the Have Your Say poll, and I'll be talking about a little bit of recent tea to do with a designer accusing Acid Betty of not paying for an outfit and then apparently burning the outfit. All that and more coming up in today's video, so let's get started. Also, just before we start, for any eagle-eyed people who maybe saw in the last video, and I also posted on my YouTube channel post section, you may notice that I've put my 13 PhDs in fashion to good use, and also interior design, obviously. It was actually a joint PhD.
That's false, America.
And I have slightly decorated and zhuzhed up my space. So I just wanted to show off all of the wares, as lovely as they are. Obviously, you may be able to see there's a few little empty spaces, perhaps, down there, which I will be filling in. There's a few other things yet to come. But let me know in the comments which of my very eclectic and obviously very expensive items are your favorite. Oh, and also make sure you hit that subscribe button because you'll want to know the other updates of the other things I add to my wonderfully decorated filming space.
Literally, no one cares.
Okay, so let's start by recapping this week's episode. So this is obviously when the queens have come back for the semi-finals. So these are obviously the three queens from each of the three brackets who were kind of like, I guess, the top three within their bracket. So the group is, in alphabetical order, Aja, Bosco, Cynthia Lee Fontaine, Diabetti, Ginger Minge, Irene the Alien, Georges, Lydia B. Collins, and Mistress Isabel Brooks. So we find out that the challenge for this week is the Snatch Game, which I think for a lot of people is kind of the most iconic challenge, or at least one of them on Drag Race. And I think a lot of people have been wondering when that was going to happen because it didn't happen in any of the individual brackets. So it makes sense that it's happening now. So I'm going to try and keep this a little bit short and snappy, which was my nickname in prison.
Girl, prison, honey.
And I'm just going to go through each queen and their performance and then go through the Have Your Say poll results. Okay, so first up we had Bosco. Now, Bosco was doing, by the way, I have my notes just down here in case you see me looking down. So Bosco was doing Kenny Kerr, who was a drag performer on the Las Vegas Strip, I believe. And Kenny Kerr also did impersonations of lots of different celebrities, which is also why Bosco then, I guess, started doing impersonations. So Bosco did Joan Rivers and Cher, but as Kenny Kerr doing an impression of them. So it's almost like doing an impression of an impressionist. I did really enjoy Bosco. I didn't know anything really about Kenny Kerr. I don't think I'd ever heard that name before. Obviously, I do know who Joan Rivers and Cher are. I feel like if I didn't know who those people were, they would take my gay card away from me. Because as we all know, when we come out as gay, we get given a card from the gay government. And that gay card can be revoked at any time if there are certain criteria that are not met. For example, not knowing who Joan Rivers or Cher are. So I did think that Bosco was funny. The only thing I would say is maybe just from the edit, I don't think it quite gave the credit that maybe Bosco deserved because it did seem very quick that she was changing between these characters. And I don't think we had enough breathing room to really get why she was doing that. So although I did like the impersonations, I think the edit did mess her over a little bit, but it did make me laugh. So I'll give it a yay, but maybe more towards the just okay side. And in the Have Your Say poll, it seems that you were maybe a bit more split about it because you said 51.9% for just okay. By the way, I'm going to go back to saying the decimal points because most people seem to think that was better. So the points are back, people. Then we had 39.7% for yay and then 8.3 for nay. After that, we had Georges as Pitbull. Now, I think all of us know who Pitbull is. I mean, I know Pitbull obviously more for his music. I don't really know much about Pitbull as a person. I know what he looks like, and I feel like Georges, I don't know, let me know in the comments, but I feel like Georges was more doing the shtick of being kind of like this kind of like swagger man, that she's done this before, like she did it in the roast for All Stars 9. So I feel like that was kind of the vibe she was giving, like this kind of like macho man maybe. But I will say, I did think it was actually pretty funny. And I think Georges trying to do anything really sort of like hyper masculine and that sort of thing is already inherently very funny. So I did think that Georges did actually do really well, although I would say maybe it did come across more as Georges rather than necessarily Pitbull. It was Georges doing that character again, but it still did make me laugh, which arguably is the most important part of Snatch Game. I think it's humor first, impersonation second. So I would give Georges a yay. And it seems that you agree, because you said 54.1% for yay, which was the majority, 37.6% for just okay, which is still kind of high, and then 8.3 for nay. Next up was Diabetti as Jane Lynch. Now, I definitely know who Jane Lynch is. I know her more for things like Glee, and she's been on quite a few other TV shows and movies and stuff. So I definitely knew the shtick, and I probably was one of the characters I was more familiar with. I actually thought Dia did a pretty decent job, at least in the interactions that we saw. I do think it started off a bit stronger than it ended, and we didn't see her that many times. So I think because I didn't see much of her, I would probably give it between a just okay, maybe a yay, but to me, I don't think we saw enough for me to really remember much about it. And I do think she maybe could have pushed it a little bit further. And it looks like you seem to agree, because you said 61.2% for just okay, which is well over half, 25% for yay, so still a quarter, and then 13.8 for nay. And then last on the top row, we had Cynthia Lee Fontaine as Dracula. We've had fictional characters on Drag Race before for Snatch Game, so I don't think this is anything particularly new. I think there's actually kind of fine for people to do these sorts of characters. Dracula is one of those people, a little bit like when Trinity the Tuck did Lucy, or like Lucifer, the devil, for the Snatch Game on All Stars 7. It's kind of a similar thing of it being a fictional character, depending on who you ask. Also, someone did say that Cynthia should have called herself Dracula rather than Dracula, which I thought was actually really funny. But anyway, in terms of the performance, it wasn't the best performance, I will say. I think she could have really pushed it a lot further, and she didn't have as many jokes as I thought she was going to have, because I think you could really make Dracula really camp, real gay, or just like, you could just make him completely different and just have make up whatever character you want. I don't think it quite hit the mark. So yeah, I think I would unfortunately have to give it a nay, because it made me laugh, but not necessarily for the right reasons. Maybe I could also stretch to a just okay. It seems like you were more on the nay side, because you said 50.3% for nay, so over half, 31.5% for just okay, and then 18.2% for yay. After that, on the second row, we had Irene the Alien as Zsa Zsa Gabor. Now, the only thing I knew about Zsa Zsa Gabor was that she was this like socialite. I think she was Hungarian American. One of her sisters was the voice of one of the Aristocats in the Disney movie. So I knew she had this sort of like the voice, and she had like millions of husbands as well. She also slapped a meter maid, I seem to remember. But that's all I kind of knew about her. But I do think that Irene did a really good job. It did sort of remind me of the character she did in the improv acting challenge on her bracket, but obviously a slightly different version thereof. But she played that character really well. I thought she interacted with Ru really well. It was a very smart character, because that's someone clearly that RuPaul is going to know who that is. So I definitely would give Irene a yay. Interestingly, you actually more voted for just okay. I wonder if maybe you were expecting more from Irene, which maybe I could see a little bit. We also didn't see that much of Irene, but I gave her a yay, but you voted mainly just okay. Yay did get 44.2%, which is still pretty high, and then nay got 4.5%. Next up, we had Aja, who was playing Cookie Tookie, or I think the full name is Samantha Cookie Tookie James. Now, I'll be honest, I didn't know anything about Cookie Tookie. I don't even think I'd ever even heard the name before. So with characters like this, I think it can work, because especially when not that many people know who they are, you can kind of fill in the gaps a little bit for people. I just don't think Aja quite did that. The only time I think I laughed was her first response, where she said something like, "I'm shaped like a Philly cheesesteak with the meat hanging out," and then she sort of wiggled her boobs. That I thought was funny, but the rest of it, I don't know if it's accurate to what Cookie Tookie is like, but it didn't really make me laugh. So I think, unfortunately, I'd have to say nay. Now, it seems that you were a bit more split because you said 50.9% for just okay, but then 44.7% for nay. So it wasn't actually that far off a 50-50 split. And then yay only got 4.3%. Next up, we had Lydia B. Collins as Pete Burns. Now, I'm very familiar with Pete Burns. I really loved Dead or Alive, the band, but also Pete Burns on Big Brother. I feel like that was one of the moments that people most remember about Pete, especially later on in his career. I did love that season of Big Brother, and we have had a Pete Burns on Snatch Game before because I believe it was on Drag Race UK. Dakota, I think it was, did Pete Burns, which was really funny. And I thought this was a perfect choice for Lydia because she's quite kooky and stuff, and that's kind of what Pete was like. I don't think this was the best impersonation of Pete Burns that I've seen, and I feel like there's so much more you could do with Pete Burns. I just don't really think that she nailed the accent at all. I think the mannerisms were somewhat on there, but I think compared to what Dakota did, which was very funny, this one fell behind for me. So I don't think it was bad enough for a nay, but it certainly was a just okay towards the nay side. And it seems like maybe you were slightly less harsh than I was.
I'll tell you why, because you are a mean girl. You're a...
So you said 61.7% for just okay, 9.3% for nay, which was not actually that much, and then yay actually got 29%. Then, penultimately, we had Ginger Minj as Reba McEntire. Now, to be honest, I didn't know a huge amount about Reba. All I knew was that she is a country singer and that she has quite an iconic look that she basically only has one lip because her other lip's so small and she has quite a big mouth. But that's kind of all I knew about her. But I feel like that's all you need to know about someone in order to find it funny. In my opinion, Ginger was really the only one that actively made me laugh. We know she's amazing at Snatch Game. I will say I don't think this was her finest Snatch Game of all of the ones we've seen. I think this was probably the weakest of the three that we've seen now. But it was still very good, and it was one of the only ones that really made me laugh. I thought she interacted with Ru so well. She knew the character well. She had developed a backstory, and she had all these other things, and she was able to volley with everything RuPaul or anyone else said, which does take real skill. So I would definitely give Ginger a yay. And it seems like you agreed because a staggering 84.2% said yay, so the vast majority, 14.5% for just okay, and then 1.3% for nay. And then finally, we had Mistress Isabel Brooks as Natalie Nunn. I had no idea who Natalie Nunn was, but I know what Bad Girls Club is because I've seen quite a few clips of it on YouTube and it's quite entertaining. So I could kind of guess the type of character that she was, but I had no base of knowledge to know whether it was an accurate impersonation or not. I was expecting really big things from Mistress because she was very funny on her original Snatch Game and she's very funny in general. But this just was a complete miss, in my opinion. Maybe it was a good impersonation of Natalie. Let me know in the comments, people, if you know Natalie and whether that was a good impersonation. But to me, it was an impersonation without any of the comedy. And watching it, I just felt a little bit like,
where are the jokes?
So unfortunately, this was probably one of my least favorite, maybe because I had quite high expectations for Mistress, but I will unfortunately have to give this a nay. And again, it seems like you agreed because the overwhelming majority of 84.1% voted for nay, then 13.9% for just okay, with only 2% for yay. I then asked you which Snatch Game performance, in your opinion, gets a slay, as in the best performance, and you voted 61.2% for Ginger Minj, which was the overwhelming majority, 17.3% for Georges, and then the others were quite close. So Irene the Alien came in third with 6.5, but then Bosco was not that far behind with 5.8. I definitely have to agree. Ginger was by far the only one that actively made me laugh out loud. I do think the Snatch Game overall was not that great, but Ginger was the standout for me, so she definitely gets the slay. Okay, so let's move on to the runway for this week, and the category was Tear a Me suit, which is basically a suit that tears off to reveal something else. So I'm going to go through them in order in which they appeared on the runway, which, fun fact, was the exact same order that they appeared on Snatch Game. Bet you didn't realise that, did you?
And no one cares.
Okay, so first up we had Bosco. I really enjoyed this kind of very eclectic style, like all the different prints, the big hair. This was probably one of the more subtle reveals because it was just kind of a tearaway, but I quite liked the actual fashion itself, and it was very quirky. I think it worked really well, and it definitely did fulfill the criteria of being a suit and you tear it off. So yeah, it definitely gets a yay from me. And it seems like you agreed, although only just, because it was 57.7% for yay, 34.9, so almost 35% for just okay, which was still quite a lot, and then 7.4 for nay. Next up, we had Gorgeous. I really enjoyed the first part of the look with the oversized pants or trousers, as I would call them, and the fact that it was sort of like a trouser suit. It just was so well tailored, but obviously oversized. It really fit her well, and it just looked really great. And also the tearaway was also fun. I do think the suit looked better than what was underneath, in my personal opinion, but I really liked that it was a very different style between the first look and the second look. They were totally different, and she was one of the only queens that really had two looks that looked good on their own. So I would definitely give Gorgeous a yay. And this was a huge landslide for yay, with 88.5% for yay, only 9.3% for just okay, and then 2.3% for nay. After that, we had Diabetes. I liked the concept for this look. So it was sort of like the exercising workout sort of over suit. And then when she took it off, it was like the sweat patches underneath, which were kind of encrusted with jewels. So I liked the humor side of it. I don't think the second part of the outfit with like the sweat patches and stuff was that great. It did kind of, to me, look a little bit like a t-shirt or something. I don't know. It kind of, although it was pretty, I don't think it was quite as elevated as some of the others. So I probably would give this a just okay. But I do think she had one of the more interesting concepts on the whole suit, because it was more of a workout suit. And it seems like you agreed, because you said 49.8% for just okay, so almost half, 29.3% for yay, and then nay still got a decent amount with 20.9. After that, we had Cynthia Lee Fontaine. Cynthia said that the inspiration for this look was quite literal from tiramisu. It was obviously from tiramisu, which is the Italian dessert. I did think that that was a cool inspiration, and I liked the colors. I do think it's unfortunate that the tearaway didn't quite work as planned, and it did look a little bit messy. I feel like the outfit itself, the top bit was nicer than the bottom half, and the reveal was okay, but maybe not quite as elevated. So I think I would give it overall a just okay, maybe towards a nay, but I don't think it was bad enough for a nay, because I still liked the colors and the actual style, but it was just maybe some of the finishing touches and the reveal slightly dampened it a little bit. However, it seems like you were a bit harsher than I was, so you said 69.3% for nay, so pretty much the overwhelming majority. 26.5%, so just over a quarter, said just okay, and then 4.3 for yay. After that, we had Irene the Alien. I thought this look was really cool, and it definitely was giving Alien, and it was also very elevated. I loved the mask at the beginning. I thought that was really cool, because I didn't see it coming at first until she got a little bit close, and then I realized it was a mask. The outfit underneath was also very Alien, but it was also really well tailored. Everything looked good. Each of the looks itself was good, so I would definitely give this a yay. And it looks like you agreed with the fashion expert, as in myself, and you said 87.6% for yay, 10.9 for just okay, and 1.5 for nay. After that, we had Aja. I didn't particularly enjoy the first part of the look, like the green suit or the over part of it. I don't think that was the best, but I really liked what she revealed to underneath. I thought the pattern was beautiful, the color was beautiful. It was something we haven't really seen as much on Drag Race, so that part I enjoyed, but the first part for me was not so much. So I would give it a yay, because I liked the end product, but it was maybe more towards a yay / just okay because of the first part. And it looks like you maybe felt a similar way to me, because you said 60.7% for yay, so over half, but then 35.2% for just okay, so still a pretty decent proportion, and then 4.1 for nay. After that, we had Lydia B. Collins. I really enjoyed this outfit, actually. Despite what Carson said about it not being steamed, I thought the first part of the outfit, the suit, was really well made. Lydia always turns it on the runway. She always has something a little bit quirky, but it always looks really impeccably made and well done. I do think the dress reveal was maybe not as impressive as the first part, and The steaming I can kind of get over because if it's sort of bulked up and tucked up, it's going to get wrinkled regardless of whether you steam it or not. So that part didn't bother me, but it did just maybe look a little bit underwhelming compared to the first part. But I would still give it a yay because I enjoyed it. And you voted 65.9% for yay, so well over half, 30.8% for just okay, so almost a third, and then 3.3 for nay. After that, we had Ginger Minge. I liked the concept of this look, but I think the execution was not quite there. I know she was going for sort of oversized suit, but I feel like on George's it sort of worked because it looked deliberate, whereas on Ginger's it looked like there was something underneath that she was going to reveal to, and the proportions just weren't quite right. I don't know, it was just something about the fabric and the way it was sitting. You could just tell it wasn't meant to look that way. And I think also she should have just gone more for kind of like bride and groom rather than it being the reference to like Doechii, I think was one of them. I feel like she should have just done bride and groom and it maybe would have fit a little bit better. And I did like the bridal look, but we've seen that quite a lot on Drag Race and we have seen it done better. So I probably would give this a just okay. And according to the votes, you said 52.8% for just okay, 25.5% for nay, so over a quarter, and then 21.7% for yay. And then finally we had Mistress Isabel Brooks. Now, this outfit, unfortunately, was not my favourite. I was a little bit surprised this episode because I feel like Mistress so far has been quite strong in most categories. And I feel like she didn't really deliver in the Snatch Game. And unfortunately, she didn't really deliver on the runway. Usually, I feel like Mistress's outfits are pretty good on the runway. And she usually has a signature style and they're always really well made. I didn't particularly enjoy this look, though. I liked the concept of it because she was obviously talking about her weight loss and things. But I just feel like the actual execution of the outfit, you could kind of see that she had an outfit underneath. You could see the gaps. You could see the stitching. It kind of looked a little bit homemade, makeshift. I don't know whether this was a last minute thing, but the reveal itself was interesting. But I thought even the reveal, although it was better than the first part, it still didn't look as amazing as some of the judges thought. So unfortunately, I would have to give this a nay. And it seems like most of you agree because you said 58.1% for nay. About a third of you, 33.4%, said just okay, and then 8.5% for yay. I then asked you who gets the pew 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 slay for this week, as in the best runway, and you voted Georges with 44.3%, Irene the Alien with 32.5%, and then Lydia B. Collins came in third with 10.4%. And I definitely agree. Georges turned it on this runway. I loved both of the outfits. I do think the suit was better than the other bit, but the suit was so well made. It fit her style. It was really cool and quirky. So yeah, definitely that was the slay for me. Okay, so moving on to the judges' critiques, and we find out that the top queen for this week and the winner is Ginger Minge. Now, I don't know what happened to me. Obviously, I just had some kind of like brain fart moment. But I said to question 5, did you agree with the top 2? Now, I'm not sure there was necessarily a top 2 because this is a slightly different format because this is more the bottom queen's lip sync rather than the top 2. So I did ask, did you agree with the top 2? And you voted 62.2% for yes and 37.8% for no. But then for the people that voted no, I said, who do you think should have been the top 2 instead? So this will tell us who we thought should have been the top 2, so not just Ginger. Obviously, Ginger came out on top with 60%, but I think the interesting part is who came in second, which was Irene the Alien with 41.4%, and Bosco was not that far behind with 34%. So we find out that then the bottom 2 are Cynthia Lee Fontaine and Mistress Isabel Brooks. I asked you in the Have Your Say poll, did you agree with the bottom 2? And 65.5% of you said yes, with 34.5% saying no. So still quite a decent proportion of no's. So as a follow-up question, I said, if you voted no, who do you think should have been the bottom 2 instead? So Mistress came out on top with 75.1%, but it was actually Arsha who got the most votes for the other person who you think should have been in the bottom, with 64.2% of the vote. So Cynthia and Mistress lip-synced to the song Who's Zoomin' Who, the a cappella mix by Aretha Franklin. And Mistress wins the lip sync, which means that unfortunately, Miss Cuckoo herself, Cynthia Lee Fontaine, is eliminated from the competition. I asked you in the Have Your Say poll, who do you think won the lip sync in your opinion? And you said 83.3% for Mistress Isabel Brooks and 16.7% for Cynthia Lee Fontaine. Okay, so finally I asked for question 8, who do you want to win the season? And you voted 32.9% for Irene the Alien, 27.6% for Bosco, and then the others were all kind of close, but in third place would have been Ginger Minge with 10.5, and not that far behind is Lydia B. Collins with 9.8. But for question 9, I thought it'd be kind of interesting to ask who do you think will win the season? And this was a landslide vote for Ginger Minge with 84.2%. And the next person was then Georges with 8.1%. And then all of the others were kind of pretty close. Okay, so let's move on to the comments for this week. And there are quite a lot of comments, so I've kind of grouped them into overall topics because otherwise we would be here until Christmas and no one wants that.
Oh, thank you, Jesus, Holy Son of God.
So I'm going to start with my Patreon members, and my Patreons Max and Elizabeth Ann kind of had a similar idea, which was talking about the Snatch Game being lackluster in general. And my Patreon Nikki also kind of mentioned this and said, surprised at how meh the Snatch Game was. Honestly, I was expecting more. And I was as well. I did have high hopes, especially in the first responses. Quite a few of the queens were funny, and then after that, it kind of just descended into not being very funny at all. Another quite big topic that came up was Mistress and kind of slightly maybe being a little bit arrogant or kind of thinking she was going to do better than she was. And my Patreon Tyler said, Mistress clearly came in with a plan, but it will be difficult to show arrogance because all of the other queens now have better track record. And my Patreon Debs was sort of on a similar line saying, I feel like they were trying to humanize Mistress, and presumably with sort of her talking about some of her struggles, but she got to eat crow by bombing Snatch Game, and we saw her get upset in the confessionals. It gave her more dimension, but I can't see her winning. Quite a few of you mentioned the moment in Snatch Game with Raven getting crowned. So Nicole said, does this mean Raven is now officially the season 2 co-winner like it should be? There were also quite a lot of comments about Georges, but sort of with different opinions. So my Patreon Sue said, I was shocked that Georges didn't win. Her Snatch Game was fabulous and her runway was flawless. She has really stepped up her game. I know Ginger was great too, but Georges was on point. After this week's episode, I'm starting to believe the rumors of favoritism towards Ginger. However, my Patreon Riot had a slightly different opinion about Georges and said, if we are not going to call out Georges for playing a character as Georges, then Cynthia should not have been called out as playing a character as Cynthia. Moving on to the comments from the Have Your Say poll, there were a lot of comments from people saying that they thought it was a lackluster Snatch Game and that Ginger was the only queen who was kind of gave a strong performance, but it was still weak compared to her other Snatch Games, which I agree with. Someone made an interesting point, which I also thought about, which they said, just wish that they showed more of everyone in the Snatch Game. I definitely wanted to see more of Bosco and Irene. I loved their performance, but there were 3 times they actually showed them to us. And then one of the big topics was obviously Ginger, Georges, and Cynthia, which were obviously kind of like the winners, almost winners, and then the eliminated queens this week. So someone said, Ginger is earning her keep. I would love to see Irene be more regarded as a fierce competitor, though. A lot of people thought that Georges should have won, though, and that comment came up quite a lot of times. Also, just in terms of the whole Ginger thing, I feel like a lot of people are discrediting Ginger because of the favoritism. But as Denali said at Roscoe's, and I have repeated multiple times, 2 things can be true at once. Ginger is an amazing queen, and yes, there is favoritism, but that's not Ginger's fault, and we can't discredit the fact that she actually was genuinely good and probably the only really good one in the Snatch Game because of the favoritism. The favoritism is not her fault. If you have any issues with that, go and speak to RuPaul and the producers, but don't discount Ginger just because you're feeling a certain type of way about the way the show is set up. Okay, so we're now going to move on to some recent tea to do with a designer accusing Acid Betty of not paying fully for an outfit, which she apparently later burned. So, as many of you will know, Willem and Alaska have a podcast called Race Chaser, where they review Drag Race episodes as well as talk about other topics. In one of their recent episodes, they had on a guest called Chakra, who is a designer who has designed outfits for many people, including other Drag Race queens. In the episode, Chakra says they made Acid Betty's paper doll runway look for All Stars 10, but Acid allegedly didn't pay for it in full. full. There were also some other details as well, and it was quite a lengthy podcast episode, so I'm just going to go through the main points of what was said. So, Willem and Alaska said before the interview started that they did reach out to Acid Betty 48 hours before, but they hadn't heard anything as of now, and they added that Acid has an open invitation to be on the podcast if she wants to. So they first introduced Chakra, who is a designer that has worked with many drag queens and also famous people, including Lady Gaga and Katy Perry, among others. Willem also said that she has known Chakra for many years. They then got into the main topic of the conversation. Chakra said they made an outfit for one of the All Stars 10 queens, which was Acid Betty.
That's weird because I thought she said that she made all of her own looks this season.
Well, Acid Betty she is a crafty queen. I mean, she's an incredible painter, and I guess she has some knowledge in construction, but I haven't really known her to make any of her full outfits from scratch.
In terms of the outfit for All Stars 10, according to Chakra, Acid contacted Chakra and asked them to make the paper doll runway for All Stars 10 because the two of them had actually known each other for a long time. Because they knew each other so well, Chakra said they would charge less for the outfit than they would usually charge. However, all of this part was done verbally and nothing was in writing, and Chakra said they should have got everything in writing looking back on it. There was no time for Acid to come from New York, where she lives, to LA for a fitting, and also the outfit had to be made of paper, which makes it hard, so it, quote, kind of got down to the wire in terms of the deadline. Also, Chakra got really sick around that time too. Then, 3 days before Acid had to go and film All Stars, she wasn't happy with the back of the outfit, and Chakra had to go and buy extra materials to make the changes that Acid wanted, which Chakra told her would increase the price that they originally quoted. Acid was apparently freaking out because it was getting so close to the deadline, and there wasn't enough time to ship the outfit from LA to New York. So Chakra got a big movers box and actually took the outfit to LA airport and met Acid directly at the airport and handed it over to her in person rather than ship it. And you're apparently not really supposed to do handovers like that, so it kind of had to be done on the down low. And this all happened in July 2024. Acid was apparently really appreciative of what Chakra had done and said she would call them after they were done filming a week or so later and they would sort out the payment. But Chakra has apparently not heard anything from Acid since then. Chakra continued that they can understand that things can get overwhelming for the queens and people get busy, but Chakra called, texted, emailed, and sent multiple DMs to Acid and didn't get any response.
So in January of this year, I sent a very kind of personal email and was like, look, I don't understand why you haven't gotten back to me, but I need to be paid for this. If you don't respond immediately, I'm going to have to resort to legal action.
One of the other parts of it is that Chakra also makes laser cut crowns and merch, which Acid had previously said to Chakra to send some of their merch, and if Acid wore any of it on the show, she would pay for it, and also tag Chakra in posts on social media to help promote it. So Chakra included some of these merch items as well as some extra paper for the outfit within the package, but Acid also apparently didn't pay for any of those things either. Then, in February 2025, Chakra randomly got a payment from Acid, which was around 2/3 of the full amount. So this was around 7 months after Chakra had originally given the outfit to Acid. According to Chakra, they kept things very professional the whole time and emailed Acid back to say thank you for the payment, but here is the revised invoice with the remaining amount Acid still owed, which was apparently around $1,000. Chakra said they kept thinking that Acid maybe would pay it back once she started getting gigs and things like that, and other queens in the past have taken a long time to pay, but usually there is at least communication from them, but apparently there was no communication from Acid at all. Then, a few months later in May, Acid performed at the WeHo Pride Festival. one of Chokra's friends was at the festival, and he mentioned to Acid that he had heard that Chokra had made an outfit for Acid, but apparently it was all positive, and presumably they didn't talk about the non-payment, they were just talking about the fact that Chokra had made an outfit for Acid. Then, 2 days later, Acid apparently blocked Chokra, presumably on social media. So Chokra felt like they were probably never going to see the rest of that money, and it probably wouldn't be worth the legal fees to try and get that money, which was around $1,000. At this point, Chokra didn't know if Acid had even worn the outfit on Drag Race, and maybe thought that the judges didn't like it, and maybe that's why Acid had not been in communication at all. But then, when the episodes eventually came out, Chokra saw that not only did Acid wear it, but the outfit also got rave reviews, even from Michelle, which was a relief. But that also confused Chokra even more. Then, recently, Acid posted a video on Instagram where she stepped on the outfit and then burnt it. Chokra said not only did Acid give them no credit as the designer, but it felt to them like Acid was, quote, burning the evidence, and it also felt very personal. I did also see that on Acid's Instagram post, Willem commented saying, "Love this at Chokra Look," and tagged Chokra. Chokra added that Acid had also posted other things, tagging brands that she had worn in the workroom, but she didn't tag Chokra, even though she had apparently worn one of their crowns on the show. They ended the interview by saying that they didn't want to cause drama with a public call out, but they hadn't heard anything from Acid at all, so they're hoping that this may be a way to get her to respond and pay the remainder of the money that's owed. Now, this is obviously a very abridged version of the interview and just the main points, so if you want to hear the full thing and get all of the details, I'll put a link to the Race Chaser podcast episode in the description, which you can go and check out. This podcast episode, as you can imagine, did cause some chatter across various social media platforms, and people had varying opinions on it. On Acid's Instagram post, where she posted the video of her burning the outfit, there were several comments calling Acid out for not paying. But there were also people defending Acid as well. So far from what I can see, Acid has not responded to any of these claims, so for now we only have one side of the story, so please bear that in mind. And we'll have to wait and see if any further details come out about this. But I just thought this was some potentially interesting information, which is why I wanted to include it in this video. However, as I always say, please do not send hate to anyone involved and just consume this type of content passively. So there you go, there was the Have Your Say video for RuPaul's Drag Race All Stars 10 episode 10. Let me know in the comments what you thought of this first episode of the semis, and what do you think is going to be the format for the next few episodes and ultimately the season. If you'd like to have your comments featured in my Have Your Say videos, as well as a raft of other benefits such as personalized cameo style videos from me, exclusive content that I only post on Patreon, as well as early access and many other amazing benefits, please consider signing up to my Patreon. It just costs a few dollars a month and it's an amazing way to keep my channel going and support me, and I'll put a link in the description if you're interested. And thank you so much to my incredible Patreon members. You are all honestly so amazing. Your support every month is literally the backbone of this channel. So thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. I truly appreciate your support. Please make sure you give this video a like and a comment, because just doing that really does make a big difference to the algorithm promoting this video. And as always, please smash that subscribe button, because I would love to get to 150k subscribers by the end of the year. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you'll join me again in the future for some more Drag Race gossip, secrets, and drama. Thank you so much. Bye!